Driscoll, Councilor Thompson, Councilor Ryan, Councilor Rudd, Jeremy Robinson, Commissioner DPW,
Yep.
and then the parking czar, Kyle Madden.
I'd like to remind everyone to use their microphone.
I got you.
Yep, microphones, and what page would you like us to be on to start, Kyle?
I don't have the full book. I don't.
all right.
I'm gonna make some comments if that's all right.
Go
Yeah, why don't you start with your spiel?
I'll pass those around. You can take a look. Those are just a map of our parking facilities, just to get the conversation going. So, DPW Committee Chair Ryan, Finance Committee Chairman Rudd, and your fellow councilors.
You got one more.
Gave you 5, but that's all right. We'll make it happen. Thank you for the opportunity to present today on the 2018-19 budget for the city parking facilities. As we do have a number of new councilors around the table today, let me just begin by discussing a few items which perhaps require a bit of clarification or some history. First, some clarification. The budget documents, you'll note that our garages administered is listed as 5 parking facilities. However, you'll note income associated with 7. That's because the city of Syracuse directly owns, partially owns, or leases a portion of 7 parking structures. The city is the full owner of 4 structures: the Washington Street, Harrison Street, Fayette Street, and Madison Irving parking garages. And the city is partial owner or lessee of 3 others: Center Armory, On Center, and Money parking garages. That said, as the budget documents indicate, the city administers and oversees management and operating agreements on just 5 of those facilities: Washington Street, Fayette Street, Madison Irving, Money, and Center Armory. Beginning in 2016, the facility that we own, Harrison Street, we fully leased that to a private company whose interests also include the recently renovated Marriott downtown Syracuse and the On Center parking garage as administered by our joint owner, Onondaga County. I'd also like to note that the facility shown in your documents as the Money parking garage is probably more aptly named the AXA parking garage these days. Money is an abbreviation for Mutual of New York. That's a company which was a former primary tenant in the now named AXA Towers. And you'll hear Money and AXA garages interchangeably used. Over the last 5 or so years, the city's also divested from a number of our parking assets. We used to have stakes in the Onondaga Towers and the Sibley's parking garages, and we no longer do. I'll be happy to take any questions on that at the conclusion of my remarks. I'd like to just continue with some of the information more specifically related to the financials, which is why we're all here. Our facilities provide a fairly consistent source of revenue. However, they also require significant investment to make sure that they are safe and structurally sound. Last year, we completed a $1.3 million renovation of the Fayette Street and Madison Irving parking garages. This project addressed deteriorating steel and concrete and has dramatically improved the safety and the condition in these facilities, in addition to extending their useful life. Earlier this year, we completed a second round of security improvements to our facilities with the installation of security cameras at Fayette Street and Madison Irving parking garages. This complemented our camera infrastructure at Washington Street parking garage, which we completed the year prior. We feel that those are making our facilities safer and are helping us solve issues after the fact. And coming up later this year, we intend to begin a nearly $1 million renovation project at the AXA parking garage, which will focus on a number of miscellaneous repairs, which are long overdue. On the revenue side, I want to highlight some of the items in there from the proposed revenue summary. Washington Street parking garage continues to add parkers and is actually nearing its capacity. We're seeing the benefits of this in our revenue, which is now projected to top out at approximately $1 million this year. The AXA parking garage was slated to have an increase this year as the result of a planned conversion of regular monthly parking spaces to higher-priced reserved parking. This revenue was not realized, however, as demand for this reserved section never materialized and the plan was tabled. Coming up next year, you'll note that there's approximately a 20% reduction in revenue for that facility, and that'll be the direct result of vehicle displacement from the aforementioned planned construction work. Anticipated revenue at the Fayette Street parking garage fell short in revenue due to longer than anticipated construction costs, timeline in terms of longer than anticipated construction, which I discussed earlier. That delay limited our ability to add monthly users to that facility and reap the benefits of their associated revenues. However, now that the project is done, we have begun adding new users, and that facility is also nearing its capacity. All of that said, you'll see in the city parking facilities, you'll note fairly stable revenue year over year. We continue to review our facility rates and their joint impact on economic development and the city's bottom line. The administration will not hesitate to make adjustments to these rates to continue improving the financial condition of these facilities while remaining competitive with an ever-changing market. In the last 3 years, we have come to the council twice for changes to the rates, and I think you can anticipate we'll be doing that again. Looking ahead, we do anticipate continued growth in our downtown as it continues to be revived. However, as I noted before, our facilities do have upper limits on their capacity. In these facilities in particular, we continue to monitor our current vehicle counts, and as I said, we'll adjust rates accordingly. The downtown living scene is also providing an emerging opportunity for our facilities. While most of our facilities do not have 24-hour access, the growth of the downtown housing market is forcing us to reconsider that. We expect these pressures to result in an upward push on all facilities, both private and public, in the coming years. And finally, I'll leave you with a statement that I make each year, and it's the opening line of the City of Syracuse Code as it refers to parking garages. It reads, the City of Syracuse has numerous parking garages used by the public at large or various segments of the public. The safety and security of these facilities and the public perception thereof not only has an impact on the condition of these facilities and the well-being of the public, but also reflects directly on the vitality of the city. If city parking garages are an indication of the vitality of our city, we feel we're getting stronger and stronger by the day, and we thank the council for their continued support in appropriating the funds to ensure that that continues. I'd be happy to take any questions you have.
I guess I'd have one question. Just Kyle, you've been working on this stuff for a couple of years, so you've come back with, changes and updates and pricing structure and all that. Is there perhaps something coming down the road that would be maybe a major policy change or a procedural change?
In terms of?
Really just anything regarding the garages. I mean, so you've redone the prices. We seem to be getting safer parks and adhering to that audit, those audit requests. I mean, how far along are we really at the point where we're kind of up to a baseline of where we need to be and now it's just fix stuff up?
We feel that the parking facilities are more structurally sound, more safe, and more fiscally beneficial to the city than at any point in the last decade. I would state that I think that this administration's preference is to take a complete look at a picture of a situation before making a knee-jerk reaction. And so in coordination with CITA, the administration, and the Department of Public Works, we continue to address the day-to-day conditions and the long-term policy impacts, not only of parking facilities, but on-street and our lots, to make sure that we're making the best decisions for the taxpayers of the city.
So you have, we changed the rates and some stuff like that. Have any of our competing garages changed their prices or their rates or anything in recent months or last year?
So I came to the council in 2015 to make the first rate changes that we had seen in parking garages in a number of years. And those rate changes, in my opinion, were long overdue. That was the first step in us bringing our rates into what I felt was a competitive nature with the rest of the marketplace. We made some tweaks to a couple of the facilities, not all, in 2016, I believe. And then again, we will consider coming to you with some additional rate changes in the coming months and years. At this point, I think that our rates are competitively priced with the rest of the market. Typically, the market isn't moving after us; it's us playing catch up, and so that would be my response.
Okay. What's the ballpark occupancy on a weekend in, say, Washington Street and Fayette Street?
So Fayette Street is not a facility that's open on the weekend. I'll start with that one. There is a limited 24-hour section that was created during the administration of Mayor Young. That is largely for tenants who reside in some row houses along Montgomery Street. So on a weekend, I would say that the capacity, we're looking at 10 to 15 vehicles. We do occasionally open for special events. For instance, every fall or every summer, there's the Arts and Crafts Festival down in Columbus Circle area. We open up for that. We also open for things like St. Patrick's Day and whatnot. But for the most part, no, we don't have a capacity there on the weekend. As it relates to Washington Street Garage, we do have a number of users that have 24-hour access, including Creek Walk Commons, Arcadis, and city employees. But other than that, the facility is not open on weekends either.
What would be the incremental cost of opening it?
At Fayette Street Garage, we believe we would need to add security to the facility to do that. And if we did it on weekends, we feel it would probably make sense to just go straight to 24-hour. By taking our current garage hours and extending them to 24 hours would result in approximately a doubling of our security costs. Those costs would obviously need to be recouped by users. It's a question of chicken and the egg. At this point, we don't feel that there's a strong enough need for additional downtown parking on the weekends. We feel that the majority of our push in terms of capacity limitations is between Tuesday and Thursday, particularly in the middle part of the day. Really, frankly, after hours and in the early mornings, our garages are virtually empty.
Okay.
Kyle, can you tell us, you're familiar with the comptroller's audit
Yes.
concern? Can you tell us where we stand with those concerns and how it may impact our budget?
Yes. So this council last month approved the corrective action plan for the comptroller's audit that was completed at the end of last year. That's been sent to the comptroller for their response. I suspect that they'll find it sufficient and meeting the requirements that they need. I don't anticipate it having any real changes on the budget for the city parking facilities. The biggest requirement that I think that they indicated in their report was to make sure that the facilities were on some type of a plan, had some type of an annual or regular structural assessment. That's something the city's been undertaking now for quite some time. We just received our 2018 inspections in April. Obviously, the impact of those assessments that we receive will dictate our capital planning in terms of what we need to invest. But I think that we've made adequate steps over the last several years to make sure that the facilities are getting regular treatment, to make sure that they're up to code, structurally sound, and safe. So I don't anticipate any significant impact on the revenue side from that audit.
Thank you.
You mentioned repairs to some of the, or reinvestment in the garages. Do we know kind of over the course of the decade what the net gain from the, my question I guess is investment versus return on, what you're getting from the garages.
Are they worth it?
Are they worth it? Yeah. And to what extent are we making a profit off them in general?
So that's a difficult question to answer. It's easy to calculate my salary. It's easy to calculate how much money comes into the parking garages. It's easy to determine what our management contract is. We can add up our expenses. It's really the pieces of the puzzle that play a much smaller role in the parking puzzle. Things like when we decide to have a garage and assessed, and we have to get the assessment department in, and those costs. Those are rare, but they add up when we do them. Things like the legal department, when we ask them for advice or counsel, or they write a contract for us, figuring out how much of their time goes into the puzzle. Really, from the parking garage perspective, Department of Public Works is the main player. But when you figure in IT's investment, engineering, as I said, law, assessment, codes, permits, etc., there's a lot of little pieces that we're having a little bit of difficulty trying to pin down exactly what those costs are. The administration, in conjunction with CIDA right now, is taking a deeper look at the entire picture. We want to try to figure out exactly what those costs are and determine if it's going to be profitable for us moving forward. As I stated in my response to one of the prior questions, I think it's important that this administration take a holistic look at the parking puzzle, not just look at parking garages as one piece of it, but rather coming up with a clear and concise and expectable parking strategy for the entire city, which includes, like I said, our on-street and our lots. And so I don't know that we have a clear picture to address your answer at this time, but it's something that we're actively working on, and I think by the end of the year we'll have a lot more clear picture.
Great.
What's in store for AXA? And how's it going to impact the number of vehicles?
So the AXA parking garage is 50 years old. Typically parking structures, and particularly in climates where we have excessive amounts of snow, contraction and expansion of steel and concrete, and the application of salt, those facilities struggle, frankly. And in a in an area like the Northeast here in Syracuse, where we use a lot of salt and we have a lot of those conditions, the average lifespan of a facility is approximately 50 years. The AXA parking garage is a unique situation because we own half and the owners of the property own half of the facility, and their loading docks are underground. So the facility in some capacity needs to remain open for them to be able to continue to do the bulk of their business. So it's not something that we can make a rash decision on. This upcoming year, we're going to be investing, like I say, approximately $1 million. We'll be replacing expansion joints which go across the road. We'll be doing a lot of concrete repairs to columns and beams. That work we hope to complete this year. We just received bids from that last week, and so we're going to move diligently to get the preferred contractor under contract when we can here, and try to come up with a plan for it. But we also have a contract date looming at the end of the year where we have we'll be unless a renewal takes place, we'll be transferring over a leased portion of the facility back to the building owners. So there's a lot of moving pieces with that facility right now, and as I stated, I think there's been a lot of discussions going on within the administration to determine exactly what the long-term solution is going to be for that, but I don't want to be hasty and jump to a conclusion before we have all the information.
Okay.
Tim, do you have any questions?
Not to ask the same question as Councilor Driscoll, but it's hard to tell you were saying it's hard to tell how much money you make on parking, and it's embedded within the DPW budget, so it's hard for us to really see, but I kind of count up $3.2 million in revenue.
Sure.
And then, like, how does that, just in DPW, like, is it less than $1 million in expenses that we're doing? Like, are we kind of at least funding DPW by a couple million by running this, or is it?
So
I get that there's some in-kind services from other departments, but
yes. So your assessment of revenue is approximately accurate. There's some fluctuations from year to year, obviously. As I stated, with the AXA garage construction will lower our revenues this particular year, but continuing to add vehicles will continue to increase the bottom line. From our perspective, in terms of operating costs, yes, they make money. Some of the other factors that play in are the capital improvements, really, which are obviously amortized over a course of time. Those costs do add up, and in the last couple of years, I think we've perhaps spent more than we needed to, only because this condition of the garages had fallen to such a low level that we needed to make a larger investment more quickly. So once we add those costs in, the gap does narrow. But again, I don't have an accurate assessment of exactly what the complete picture is, and I hope to later this year.
And not to, it's probably hard to quantify, but the $1 million we're putting into the AXA garage, do you have an estimate of, does that give it a brand new life, or, are we putting another 10 years on its vibe? You said it's a 50-year garage. It's Northeast, usually about 50 years is about the thing. So this $1 million, you feel it'll give it a new half-life, a new full life, or any way to predict?
This is a project that will allow the facility to take care of some of its most severe structural deficiencies. This is not a comprehensive do everything we need to do in the building job. Right. Unfortunately, we don't have the capital funds available to do the full extent that we perhaps need. We'll continue to assess the conditions at AXA and work with the building ownership and the administration to forge a path forward.
Gotcha.
I guess you've answered this already, Kyle, but so there's nothing, we don't have to worry this year about any large, you said early on that the buildings are in good shape, the best shape they have been in quite some time. So we're not concerned that there's going to be any above and beyond deterioration that might show up in any of the parking garages.
In April, we received our most recent 2018 structural condition assessments from CNS engineers, at which point they certified that the facilities are structurally sound and safe for another year. We don't anticipate anything major that would change that assessment. We continue to monitor our facilities from in-house on a regular basis, and then we have our structural engineers go through on an annual basis to continue to take a look at things. We do have a $600,000 CIP request for this upcoming year, which we'll use to continue this capital improvement projects that we do. Other than that, I don't see any. I don't predict us coming to the council for anything else.
Thank you.
I've visited other cities where they have completely automated parking garages, no people at the gate, no cameras recording things,
Yeah.
credit card, everything.
Sure.
The machines take cash. Have we ever considered automation and what that would take in order to do it and what it might save? Or
Yes, as part of, again, a longer strategy, that's something that has some merits. Unfortunately, as it stands, and I know this is an administration priority, we want to begin accepting credit cards, not only in parking garages, but for a variety of city services. Until we have that as an option, we can't really get rid of our cashiers, and we can't move to a more automated facility. Also,
you don't accept credit cards in the parking garages?
no, we do not.
Oh, wow.
As we also move forward, it's important to remember that our current code requirements as it relates to safety and security requires there either be an active security guard on patrol in these facilities or security cameras that are consistently monitored. We've effectively tried to do both approaches to really protect ourselves as best we can, but there would always need to be at least somebody in terms of that, and then there'd obviously be garage management as well. It's something that parking facilities are starting to do more and more of. I don't know that we really have too many in the way of automated facilities in the city of Syracuse. We certainly don't have any in the city's portfolio, but it's something that is clearly headed in that direction. But I'd also caution that I think that the overall situation as it relates to parking in the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years is going to constantly be changing as we start to re-envision the way that we use transportation and where we how we do it. I think a lot is going to be changing. So I'm cautious to jump to conclusions at this point, but it's something we're considering.
I wonder if we could ever do like an easy pass option. Some places they just send you the bill when you drive through. You don't even if you don't have easy pass, like in Canada, they just mail you the bill. But
Sort of like the
if there were
airport.
options with other levels of government to partner.
I don't know that partnering with New York State on Easy Pass is exactly the solution, but I think that there's potentially some merit to that. We could discuss it more.
Any further questions?
I just think it might be, I don't know how to do this within DPW or with the budget office, but it seems like there's a need to better understand we can see the revenue, that part seems reasonable to pull out, but then the expenses seem harder to understand, and then I think it makes it harder to make decisions about, does automation make sense, what are the value adds, and even those investments might have revenue implications, but because of the way it's just kind of in here, in different places, so to the extent in the future as we move forward, they can like work to having the expenses more tightly associated with parking, clearly articulated in the budget and the financial statements. I think that would be very helpful.
Sure. So I can't comment on the budget department and how they put together their documents, but it's clear that your concern is valid. I think that if you look at between salaries and professional services, and then operating expenses and then capital costs, yes, it does show up in different spots, and I don't think it's very easy to pick out and pull and choose what you need. Internally at DPW, we do our best to try to track those things, and I think that we have a slightly better handle on that than perhaps what you have in your budget docs. But I think that your concern is appropriate. Some cities have moved to create a department of parking. The city of Syracuse has not. We also have the capacity to implement a parking authority. But I think it's important to get a good baseline of where we're at, and like I say, we're working to get to that point at this point to determine if the parking garages as a standalone entity make or lose money, and then how that fits into the larger picture with our on-street and the functions of finance in terms of adjudication, the police department in terms of writing tickets. There's a lot of players in it, and unfortunately it is spread out across city operations, so it does make things difficult.
Could you explain what the differentiation would be there between, like, making parking a separate standalone department and what, you said some municipalities have opted for that, making parking a separate thing. What would be the, advantages of separating it as other municipalities do?
It's nothing I've investigated too deeply into, so I'm hesitant to provide too detailed of an answer. Obviously, to Councilor Rudd's concern, I think it would allow us to more clearly see what the expenses are. If you look through your budget documents and you look at the police department, fire department, DPW,
right.
you can clearly see what that department is both making and spending. I think it would also allow us to have just a better handle on what our overall strategy is in terms of parking, and be able to have a singular opportunity to look at the parking situation more holistically as opposed to piecemeal. Again, there's multiple players involved. It's nothing that would happen overnight, but it's something that I think that the city could potentially benefit from. And I'm not sure if it's a parking department within city operations, or if it's utilizing the parking authority, or it's divesting from parking. I think that there's a number of options available to us, and I think by the end of the year we'll have a much clearer picture on the pros and cons, the pluses and minuses, the expenses and the revenues, to make a more informed decision.
Makes sense. Thank you.
How will you talk about those as you have more information? Will there be a point when you share with the council before a year from now for the next budget?
Yeah, I think that's the case. We're working with CIDA right now and some third-party partners to determine how we can best figure out this situation. I don't think it's something we're going to be able to do ourselves. I think we'll need more of a comprehensive study from a third-party consultant. This is something that the city has done before. In the early part of the decade, in 2011, we did have a comprehensive parking study. It made a number of recommendations. Some of them have been followed through on, some have not, both for varieties of reasons. But we don't want to use a document that's 7 years old to inform our decisions today, especially in such a rapidly changing environment. So, obviously just the downtown living scene itself, several of you councilors didn't live here 7 years ago, so things are changing. And so we want to make sure that we have accurate and up-to-date information. So as that process takes place, I'm sure that the administration will work with the council to make sure we have a strategy to move forward.
Thank you.
Questions from any other council? Great, thank you. Thank you, Kyle.
Thanks, Kyle.
Thank you, Council.
Thank you.
We'll start the next